Welcome back to the Marianne Hickman Show. Today is Talk Tips number 25. Why should I start a podcast? Check it out. So why should you start a podcast? Isn't that expensive? Don't you have to buy a bunch of really pricey equipment and build a studio in your basement in order to start a podcast? Guys, forget about all that. Let me tell you why before I tell you how and what. The reasons that you want to start a podcast are, number one, it is a digital stage that you control the frequency of. You can win a stage every time that you record an episode. We publish 3 podcast episodes every single week between this episode right here that you're listening to and our guest episodes. So starting a podcast is just going to help you get on more stages. And if you're like me, you're keeping track of how many stages that you've been on. Listen, I want you to be on 1 million stages. Everyone that's in my universe, I am counting how many stages you tell me you win. And we are going for 1 million, baby. And listen, I want you to make $1 billion doing it. Your slice of $1 billion. Maybe it is billion, in which case we'll do more billions. Awesome. But I want you to get more stages so you have more opportunities to grow your business and get customers. Now, here's the number 2 reason you should start a podcast. Earlier this year, I was at a conference with Grant Cardone's one of the 10X conferences, and I was given an opportunity to speak at that conference. And I had to get a CTA off the cuff, ready to go, that was relevant to that audience. Now, that entire group of people was bent on trying to win their next stage. So my call to action was come to my podcast. Come be on another stage with me. Let me get to know you better. And it gave me a really high opt-in rate with my call to action because I had what the audience wanted and it enabled me to give it to them. Now, this leads into number 3, which is the power of networking through podcasts. I've had some of the most incredible guests on my podcast. I've had some really, really big names like Forbes Riley and Keaton Hoskins, and I've had some brand new people that are up and coming that are already starting to have some stage wins, and some of them are even my students. I love providing a platform for my students to be on. And I also really love being able to spend an hour one-on-one with people whose hour it's really tough to buy. So if you have a podcast, you have an easy way to say, hey, listen, I've always admired you. I love the work that you do. Maybe I read your book. I want to have you on my show. Do you do podcast episodes? And it is very, very rare for me that people don't come on my show when I say, hey, can you come on my podcast? Guys, it is one of the best ways to network possible. Let me give you some hints. You want to interview people that are also in your niche. So for me, I like to interview people that have put on events, that have done public speaking, that are new to public speaking, that do marketing, that do sales, because everything is relevant for you. That's what I want to do. I want to make content that's relevant to you. I also want to learn along the way. So I get to grill these people on their products. I get to grill these people on what they would do if I were to be mentees of theirs. So you want to interview people that are in your niche. Peers that are in your niche. I also want to interview people that are ahead of me in my niche. And I also want to interview my students who are on the path, but they're still, early in their stages. They're making progress in their stages. I also want to interview people that are relevant to my sub niches. So I teach public speaking, but I've also been a single mom. I'm going to interview other single moms that are relevant to my sub niche because maybe some of you are in the same boat and you want to learn how to get your mindset right, or maybe your finances right. And then I'm also going to interview potential students. I want to interview my ideal client avatar, have them on my show and learn more about the people that are coming into my airspace. It's going to help me a ton with my marketing. Now, with your podcasts, guys, if you don't have a bunch of fancy equipment, don't worry. I started with my phone. Your first episode is going to be the worst episode. You have yet to learn everything that it takes to make your 100th episode amazing. So don't worry if it's just your phone. Put it up, strap a mic to your chest. If you have one, maybe get a fake mic. This is a real one, but you can get like a dummy mic and just put it up if you need a prop, but you don't even need to do that. Guys, I started filming this podcast in my room. And then I took it to a studio that I had to rent. And finally, here we are over 50 episodes later. We have a studio that's being built out. And if I turn the camera around, you'd still see some things that aren't done. It doesn't matter if it's finished. It matters that we're going. I would much rather be over 50 episodes in today than just be barely starting my show and have all this equipment and not know what I'm doing. So those are the reasons to get your podcast going. In fact, you might be coming to one of my upcoming podcast workshops. I'll post a link below on what the previous podcast workshops have looked like. If there's an upcoming show, I'll make sure to put that in the notes as well. I look forward to hearing about your show. If you've already got a podcast, post it in the link below. Maybe you guys can find guests in the comments and find your next show in the comments. And as always, if you don't yet have my podcast database, I've got over 800 shows to date on that database that are all looking for guests. So go to mariannehickman.com/database. I'll give it to you completely free. Find your next show to appear on as a speaker, and also find your next guest. There's a list of over 1,000 guests on there that might be perfect for your show. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Marianne Hickman here again. Listen, I hope super helpful for you. Maybe you learned something new. Share with me in the comments what was valuable. Or if you have this whole separate question like, hey, I wanted to know about this. I wanted to know about stage fright. I want to know how about my presentation on stage. I want to know about how to dress on stage. Anything that you want to know that's relevant to growing your business through stages, put in the questions. Because guess what? I go through and answer all of those personally. That's not an agency or a VA. That's me going through and looking at your questions because you are who I am here for. So last thing is I want you to get this database. If you haven't gotten it already, now I've got thousands of downloads on this thing, so maybe you've got it, but if not, make sure you go to mariannehickman.com/database. What that's going to do is take you to a page. You're going to input all of your information. We're going to send the database to you. You're going to request access to it. I keep it locked down so I can make sure I get it to just the right people. And you're going to request access. And then once you have that, you're going to go through and apply to podcasts that have the topic that you'd be an expert speaking on. Here's the thing. I get this database updated twice a week. So there's always new stuff in there. And if you're a podcaster, there's even a list of guests that you can have on your show on that podcast. Maybe you end up doing a podcast swap and you grow your audience that way. Regardless, I want you to get it. So mariannehickman.com/database, and we'll see you in the next Talk Tips.